Hello, welcome to Heels in the Hierarchy with SJ and Pegsy. I'm Pegsy. This episode was originally recorded in January, but we wanted to delay its release until February. You'll hear us talking about New Year's resolutions that we made at the time, but we wanted to reflect on how these resolutions actually sound in February. You'll hear us discuss the personal resolutions that we were making at the time, how to support your team, being supportive to others, and also resolutions for managers. They're more of a blueprint for how to develop a well-functioning team. We really do hope you enjoy this episode.
Happy New Year, darling.
Happy New Year to you.
2026. I remember being, this is when I feel old, when you look back and you go, oh, I remember 2020, not 2020, year 2000, and people start saying it's the end of the world.
Yes.
And now in 2026. And
Quarter of a century in.
So,
more than.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a good start of the new year. It's good that we're recording again. Looking forward to, just getting back into it.
I think we've got some really exciting episodes coming up to record in 2026. We've got into our stride much more, I think, doing the podcast. We've got more confident, and yet we're still putting ourselves out there, getting outside of our comfort zone. Start of 2026, I didn't make a New Year's resolution as a conscious resolution. I have started to exercise again, simply because life events got in the way of me continuing my exercise, and after Christmas seemed to be the ideal time to start getting sort of back onto the exercising, rather than it being a New Year's resolution. So it could just as easily have been Easter or after my holiday. It was a coincidence that it was at the start of the new year.
Are you saying it's an unconscious decision that just happened to collide with the new year?
Yes.
So you don't have to put pressure on yourself.
Yes.
That has to be there.
But in a way, that's why we wanted to talk about New Year's resolutions, because I am of the opinion that we can put an awful lot of pressure on ourselves doing New Year's resolutions because of the expectation, I think, subconscious or conscious expectation, that we're going to fail at them. So we all think we should make New Year's resolutions, and then we don't follow through with them, or we choose not to make New Year's resolutions because they're only going to fail.
Was it the word? So as you're saying, I was thinking, well, I know plenty of people who are trying to do something, but I haven't had a conversation with any of my colleagues, friends, family about the word New Year resolutions.
Yeah.
So it's almost, if you don't say the word and you're doing something, then you're less automatically going to fail, right?
Well, so that then led us to think, should we do anything about New Year's resolutions? Are we putting pressure, expectations on other people to have done resolutions? And so when we decided to do the episode, we then discussed, where does the concept of New Year resolutions come from? And it made sense as preparation for this podcast that we look at where the history of New Year's resolutions came from. And SJ, you might be interested to know that the concept of New Year resolutions actually dates back over 4,000 years to the ancient Babylonians.
Oh, okay.
They made promises to their gods. They had a 12-day festival called the Atiku Festival, which was a festival anticipating a good harvest and a favourable year. And that principle of the promises to the gods was later then adapted by Romans, and then further in time in the Christian religions and associated religions. So about 2,000 years BC, the Babylonians made promises. They would return borrowed items or pay debts, and that would ensure good fortune for the coming year. Then, with the formation of the Roman calendar, is it the Julius calendar, I think it's called? Julius Caesar established January the 1st as the start of a new year. The Romans honoured a god called Janus, and Janus was the two-faced god of beginnings and endings.
Okay.
And that's where the concept of ending a year and starting a new year came from. And in the starting of a new year, they then made promises, the Romans made promises for good conduct. Then moving further forward in time, in the Middle Ages, knights renewed vows of chivalry on New Year, sometimes by pledging allegiance, would you believe, to a peacock or a pheasant.
Of course.
Because
what other gods is there?
Why not?
Oh, dear.
And then the Christians, around the 17th century, the Christians adopted the practice. They viewed New Year as a time for moral reflection and resolve to live more piously. And then basically in modern times, the concept of what we are used to as New Year really started to evolve from the 17th to the 19th century, really gaining traction in the 19th century and being properly solidified from the 20th century onwards, where it became a widespread practice. So the concept of a New Year resolution is thousands of years old, which I find quite fascinating. Probably explains why we feel the weight of pressure on ourselves for having a a New Year resolution. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting was the psychology. The concept of New Year resolutions, because it's associated with the start of a new year, it taps into our human desire for self-improvement. So we've got that human desire for a fresh start, hope, a blank slate, the promise of spring not too far round the corner, because by the time we've made it to New Year, we're a couple of weeks past the shortest day. So we're beginning to get a sense of the day is getting just a smidge longer. Okay. So we've got hope, we've got transformation, we've got the period of self-reflection that we invariably have over the Christmas season. And then also the sort of dopamine effect, the wellbeing effect of setting and achieving goals that feed into our brain's reward centres. And that goes from the idea of initial goal setting to goal achievement and trying to keep up that continued motivation. However, as we know, a lot of New Year resolutions fail. Often we set unrealistic expectations. We sometimes have overly big objectives. We put a lot of store by the willpower associated with a New Year's resolution. So an awful lot of New Year resolutions are about sort of diet and exercise and health and well-being. We can set really overly stretching resolutions.
But do you think I think it's interesting to hear all about the history of it. And, I love hearing about history and understanding where things come from and how they've evolved. But as you were talking, there's two things that came through about it. Is the note of the reasons behind why we do something necessarily isn't as important as the goal of what we're trying to achieve now. So before it's like it's expected of us, everybody, to do it, knowing that we might fail. Whereas now, a lot of the conversations I would say is that in order to achieve something, it's less about, think about language and obviously history about gods and doing it to get a new fortune. It's now, don't worry about the New Year resolution, change your mindset because you've got a goal to achieve, and that's going to be going into the psychology of what you're saying around achieving something. So get yourself smaller goals, because we're never very good at doing long distance for a year's too long. So if you do it, if you'd achieved it a week, well done, you've achieved your goal. The next one, you've done a month now, well, really good, isn't it? So we're micro winning. I think what we're seeing more and more of is that people are having New Year's resolutions as mini goals rather than a whole year.
Yeah. And I think that's because you're absolutely right, SJ. The focus has changed. Instead of these massive aspirational goals, we've realised that it's good to achieve improvement for our well-being and for our happiness. And so as a result of that, the language has changed, and therefore the expectations have changed as we've become more aware as a society of the importance of well-being. Because where we've set really strong expectations for achievement historically, that's not been good for our mental health. It's not been good for our well-being, because there's a massive sense of failure if we don't achieve those goals. But in the 21st century, with us having a much more nurturing mindset towards ourselves and each other, we're modifying the level of expectation associated with those goal settings, which I think is really important.
But that's probably why you see, if we went to ask 50 people what's the top 5,
Yeah.
it is always just generally the same, isn't it? So it's whether it's, I'm going to guess now, you're going to tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I would say it's always going to be something around health as the top one, whether it's fitness, not drinking, not smoking, dry January, that's 3 out of 4, something about finances, I'm sure somewhere.
Yeah. Spending less money, buying fewer things, saving the planet,
drink more water, put everything into that one. But it is very much, I don't know if it's a self-centered thing, or whether it's a self-bettering thing, or we always think that, like I say, talk about the psychology of it, is that we need something to look forward to. If you talk to people at work, when's your next holiday? You always have you always need something to look forward to. And if you've got a goal that benefits you, whether it's health, fitness, well-being, then it's a good conversation starter. It's something that everyone potentially in your workspace is doing something, whether it's you start seeing it quite slowly. You suddenly see the water bottles appearing in meetings. You suddenly go in, no sugars on the table. Everyone has a conscious,
no biscuits and cookies.
No biscuits and cookies, more fruit. Everyone's trying to do something, even if they don't talk about it.
And I think that's it. It's both a positive and a negative, because you know that you're doing your New Year's resolutions with other people, so that's your positive. But there is the peer pressure of the negativity of, anything they set their mind to, they achieve. And also the fact that the day that is the sort of like the most likely where people are going to give up on New Year's resolutions is the 9th of January. So actually that's not too far into the year.
It's not even a month, is it?
Yeah. Well, not even a fortnight.
Yeah.
And I think that's because everybody's doing it at the same time, and there's almost like a mutual weight of expectation that's associated with New Year's resolutions. But if on the 11th of April you decided that you were going to eat more healthily, you wouldn't necessarily do and announce that in the same fanfare that you would with New Year's resolutions. You wouldn't enforce everybody in your team to no longer have team meetings with biscuits. It would be much more sort of personal and measured in terms of how you approach it, how you announce it, how you follow through. So I think that's some of the issue with the New Year's resolution. And for me, it's because it's actually, although there's a history behind it, it is still a somewhat arbitrary day. Julius Caesar said January the 1st is the start of the new year. Well, that doesn't have to be the start of everything new that you do in your life.
No, but I think you're right, because I think Easter's the same kind of thing, isn't it? It's like, we've made it to the first quarter.
Yeah.
We've got the spring comes, there's always opportunities. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Is less about the new year, but more about what's going to be important for you. What's your perspective? So obviously one of the things I do coming to the end of the year is reflection. So a lot of reflections of what I've learned when I'm doing things like what's, whenever ending a session, what's what's been most impactful for you this year? What have you learned about yourself? What's the thing that you're really proud of? What's the things that you've not known that you do know now? That kind of thing. Because that helps more projecting perspective into the new year, because you kind of need to finish off, and for us it's kind of like that. But you are right. I think it's helpful to an extent. And I think sometimes it's nice that especially when you're doing a goal, if you're doing it with others, you're more likely to achieve it.
Yeah.
But if you're surrounded by people that all they talk about is food because they're hungry all the time, then that's not going to be supportive, because then you're more likely to go, oh, well, let's just throw the towel together.
But also resolution, and especially New Year resolution, there's a lot of heaviness around that. Whereas a goal or an aspiration or a reframe or a rethink is so much more enabling. The language around it is so much better, and therefore really so much more achievable to my mind. And also your point about sort of micro goals and not necessarily lower expectations, but kinder expectations. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she's had to live out of area for a couple of weeks. Somebody in her family's been in hospital, and she's been spending sort of half of the week in one area and then the other half of the week at home. So with a lot of that pressure on, she has found herself having perhaps a few more glasses of wine than she would normally have. She's eaten more takeaways than she normally would. And she has had less self-care that she would normally sort of undertake. But what was quite nice in the conversation with her was that she then followed up that reflection with the fact, but at least I'm doing it for half a week. That is so much better than me not doing it at all. And now that the family member is out of hospital and life is getting back to its normal rhythm, I know that she's now more likely to be doing the things that give her a sense of achievement and well-being.
That's what they say. It's make a goal, but then do all the little stepping stones to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
So, one of the largest ones is always about losing weight.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, don't think about the 5 stone you've got to lose. Think about the pound you're going to lose in 2 weeks. So 2-week goal. What's the easiest thing? Drink water, go for walks. Don't worry about the exercise or nutrition. Excellent, you've done that. Now let's build it. But we always want quick fixes. So we want to have that done really quickly.
Well,
just think about, if last year the biggest thing, I don't know about you, that I saw was all these injections to get weight quickly.
Well, there's an episode.
That's an episode. But the danger is that we don't have the research to see the long-term effects of that.
Exactly.
And all that's doing is suppressing hunger. It's not actually doing anything.
Yeah. Exactly.
So therefore, when you come off it, people won't come off it. I know people's had really bad reactions to it. I know people that looks like Skeletor, that, become very unwell. And I know it's not about a health fitness podcast, but my concern is that it was around the quick fixes. And I think back to the New Year's resolutions, it can be quite similar to that, where you want to have your resolution that would be really quick and therefore give you the results. And as soon as you don't achieve or see any results quickly, that's the energy and the motivation that you lose. Or the other element is around, we are waiting for our motivation to drive us. But actually your motivation goes up and down just so that your moods go up and down. So we can't rely on that.
And your weight goes up and down. I mean, we were talking about it the other day, and you were saying, don't weigh yourself every day, weigh yourself once a week. And I was quite obsessed with weighing myself every day. And the challenge is that some small thing may happen. Any number of physiological things can happen. You get on the scales and you're 2 pounds heavier than you were the day before. That's a massive demotivator. But if you're weighing yourself one day a week, then there's less of a sense of failure associated with that same 2 pounds, because that could have happened any days in the preceding 7 rather than just yesterday.
And not even including the hormones, the body weight, the water weight, the hormones, everything. Yeah.
The challenge then that you set yourself for doing better next week is easier to manage because you've got a whole week until next week. Whereas if I've gained £2 just from yesterday, that
and you do
can
nothing and then you
become-
put more on. It's the psychology of it as well.
Yeah.
I think another thing that was a kind of an interesting takeaway for me is a coach said, don't worry about the weight. Think about not only the way you feel about yourself, but take photos if it's about weight, because actually your body changes shape over time. So you're more likely to get motivated by pictures, which is sometimes what makes people want to lose weight, because they've seen a photo of yourself and you go, I did not think you looked like that. And you go, what? And then you take more and more body photos and you can see your body changing rather than worrying about the scales, because they're always going to go up and down. So there's lots of little, I suppose, things you can pick up from experts and people. But I think at the crux of it is finding your people to support you, encourage you, and not self-loathe yourself if you don't achieve something. And then you have a bad day, like just the next day is a new start. So see every day as a new opportunity.
Have you heard of Whoop?
Oh no, tell me about Whoop.
So Whoop,
as in like whoop 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 whoop.
Yeah, exactly. It's a method for goal setting.
Okay.
And it was developed by a psychologist, and basically Whoop stands for wish, outcome, obstacle, and plan. And it's a strategy that combines positive thinking with realistic problem solving. What you do is you envisage your goal, and then you have a specific if-then plan to overcome it if there's an obstacle. It's something that you really want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What's the best outcome from completing the goal? What may keep you from completing the goal? And then what can you do to overcome the obstacles? So that's the if-then thing.
For example, like, the whole going to the gym situation, but your motivation is the obstacle. Because actually you're waiting for your motivation to be always like, I'm ready for it. Whereas you get days you're just like, I'm so tired, I can't bother. That's your obstacle. How can you overcome it? It's almost like you're planning, aren't you? You're doing
So your if-then might be that you say to somebody in your friendship group or in your household, if I say that I'm really not that excited by going to the gym this evening, then what I'd like you to do is, and you could agree it between the two of you and do the scenario plan. So you could say, if I say I'm too tired to go to the gym, then you can say to me, go to the gym. But equally,
don't mean self-loathing. What the hell are you talking about?
But equally,
come on, girl, you can do it.
You can then come back and say, but then if I say to you, don't talk to me like that, you can say, and so for me, the if-then thing isn't necessarily a negotiation to be made to not get away with it, but to no longer do the thing that you've committed to. You can be in a very grown-up conversation with somebody and say, you know what I'm like, and I'm going to say at least once a week, I'm too tired to go to the gym. So I'd really like you to support me by, or you could say, how can you support me to support myself or to achieve my goal?
I'm coming over and I'm driving you over because you're not going to get in there otherwise. You have
or
to
I'll come with you, or I think that kind of thing could be quite useful. So an example could be, I want to improve my productivity, and I'm a real sort of starter and not finisher. So I want to improve my productivity. The outcome is that in improving my productivity, I will be less stressed because I will get things done. Mm-hmm. The obstacle I know is that I have a hard time prioritizing tasks. So my plan is that at the end of each day, I will create a task list for the next day. So that's a really straightforward process. So my wish, improve productivity. The outcome, it will reduce my stress. The obstacle is I do have a hard time prioritizing, and my plan will be to create a list of tasks. The if-then bit would be perhaps that as my goal-orientated buddy to hold me to account, I could say, if I don't email you a copy of my to-do list by the end of the day, you can message me at 5:30 and say, just checking in, where's your list? And then if I don't do it by 6:00, you can say, but do you remember why you wanted to achieve that, what your outcome was, and what my obstacle is? And then you can feed back to me some solutions for how I can help prioritize my tasks.
So it's more like this is more of an integrative, engaging tool.
Yeah.
To set goals, help you achieve things, but also helping people to be account. Whereas a lot of the time, especially in the workplace, you are told to use SMART goals.
Exactly.
Whereas, I don't know how many people you write it down, but how many often do you revisit it?
But also it becomes so incredibly formulaic that you spend all of your time making it fit the SMART acronym and not being pragmatic. And of course, the thing is, how you can make them stick is, as we've discussed already, having small, specific and focused goals. Yeah. You build the habits over time. They become part of your regular behaviours. By building them small, you can stack goals of becoming more efficient.
You've got the support of other people to keep you accountable.
Yeah.
I know for myself, like the only thing that really works is if I'm accountable to somebody, because that helps in terms of, I know I've got a timeline, I know I've got, having some kind of framework is always helpful, isn't it? So that's a really good example of how you could use that if you're trying to support people in the workplace and things. And I think I don't know whether our viewers would think the same, but we've talked about it before, whereas women's always our worst critic. We're always trying to achieve something. We're always spinning plates. We've always got juggling things between work, life balance, childcare, go to the gym, and I've got to eat healthy, and now I've got to you almost put in more and more tasks on yourself.
Yeah.
But if we flip it, and if you could use the work method at work, or if you're one-to-ones with your manager and say, look, I'm trying something new this year. I'm thinking about trying to, not jump on the bandwagon of having quick fixes, but I want to change my mindset. I want to get more healthier. It would be really helpful if you can support me. So be more directive in saying what you need, isn't it? And that's another positive step, is asking what you need, or saying, so we've got these goals that I want to achieve in my personal life, but actually in the workplace, I want a work-life balance. So let's work together on it. Or I'd really like to be better at time management.
Yeah.
Can we think about that? And could you encourage it and bring it up in terms of what you can see that I'm doing really well?
Yeah.
Because that's the way that I would do well. So it's maybe about reframing all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And you have a good manager, or you've got good colleagues that know you well, then knowing I've talked about the stress management, knowing what your stress triggers are by, for example, overworking yourself or trying to have too many things to achieve at the same time. What's your behaviours? So if your behaviours, I get more snappy, I go withdrawn, I'm just wanting to do too much, that's not going to be good for your productivity or for your way of working. So having, I don't know how people feel about being more honest, but going, if I'm like this, then this is what you need to know about me.
Yeah. And the reason that I like the WHOOP method, and particularly because you've got this if-then scenario-based element to it, is that it makes it more supportive with friends, with colleagues, to help you to achieve the things that you have set out to achieve through that aspiration. So we're January now. It's the time of the year for dry January. I decided a while back that I wanted to have a go at giving up alcohol, and I knew that dry January was on the horizon. So I gave up alcohol in November, because I knew that if I was going to do it in January, it would be so hard because of the pressure of it being dry January. I'm part of a networking group. We meet once a month, and we often have a glass or two of wine when we meet. And I'd said to a friend of mine that I was giving up alcohol. I mentioned that one of the obstacles that I have is when we go to this particular place, my default is to order a glass of wine, and I'm likely to do that by default, and therefore I've scuppered my alcohol-free plan. And she just simply said, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean." She said, I now try and think as I go to the bar, what's my non-alcoholic drink? And I just go for a lime and soda. And so by the time I've walked in and got to the bar, I've reminded myself that I'm not drinking, and I've planted in my memory that I'm going to have this specific non-alcoholic drink. And that's the obstacle. And then the if-then part of it was that she said, "Why don't we go in together? I'll meet you outside and we'll go in together so that you don't fall into the default of going to the bar and ordering a drink, and then you've got the alcoholic drink before you've even realised it." And that's just so much easier. So there's a lot in that. You don't have to have dry January in January. If you, for example, choose to give up alcohol, you can give it up at any day of the week, any week of the year. We've got the WHOOP method there, and I like the idea of identifying obstacles, not as weakness, but as potential pitfalls to continued motivation. And then the if-then bit is having colleagues and trusted friends and advisors to say, either to share their own experiences or to say, well, if you do A, I can help you with B.
I think what goes back to, we can't do all these things alone.
Yeah.
No matter what your, like, similar when it comes around to Lent. I never say about giving up things because it seems like it's a negative connotation. So it's all about what is it that I would like to take on, and I'll do it that way. And it's similar to New Year, is most people are giving up something, but if you reframe it and go, I'm choosing to start. So you're doing the thing since November. You've done incredibly well, can I say?
Thank you, Jan.
Very proud of you. It isn't just it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
So everything around resolutions in some form matter is a lifestyle choice.
Yes.
And so it's a decision. And I think if we bring that in our mindset with other people saying, this is what I'm doing, and instead of having a whole conversation about the negativity about New Year's resolutions, but being more, you need people to be encouraging and supportive.
Yeah.
But also, I may want to kind of just stop. What do you need? Asking questions rather than just having a conversation about, oh, that's not going to achieve, or this happens, or here's your New Year's resolution, is going, actually, how can I help? Same in your workplace. So if you're supporting people and you're having your one-to-ones, is there anything else that you're taking on this year that I can support you with? It doesn't have to be about New Year's resolutions per se, but it is about, how can I be in that with you? How can I support you? What do you need? Often some people don't know, they just want you to know.
Yeah.
But be in a more encouraging mindset for your colleagues.
That's a really good point, because it does tie into our role as leaders and managers of teams, that if we've got a good trusting relationship with our team members, they're probably more likely to open up and say, this is how I've decided to approach the new year. You can be authentic and share your own experiences of things like, I've moved away from resolutions and I'm sort of trying goals and aspirations. I don't know if you've heard of the WHOOP method, but here's how it works. And if you want me to help you with some of those if-then scenarios, I'm here to do that. And then you're giving them permission to take away that pressure from themselves. You're building further trust, which is quite good. And whether or not those goals that they set themselves, either for the year or for the month or whatever it is ahead, you're helping to support them. And as you said, so much of it goes back to well-being. And it can just help productivity overall. It can help performance overall. It can help sickness absence overall, because that's all about motivation, about self-esteem. There's just so much in there.
But also there's a person behind it.
Yeah,
And so we often, regardless of the why, it's the why for that person.
exactly.
So our responsibility is to enable them to feel heard, listened to, and encouraged, because you're more likely to get the best out of that person.
Yeah,
So if you don't have a good relationship with your manager, or you don't have a good relationship generally with seniority, what you do need is also to recognise that you spend an awful long time in the workplace. So you can't just achieve your goals at home or out of hours. You've got to be consistent in the workplace. So the more that we can utilize that as a training ground and go, actually, this is what I'm doing, and getting your colleagues involved, or I'd really like your support. When we go out, do you mind if we do more walking meetings? Or do you mind if, don't ask me for tea and coffee, just, get used to just giving me hot water or lemon or something like that.
yeah,
It helps people to feel that they're involved.
yeah,
Right. So I think that's really important. And not, I suppose the thing I've seen very is waiting for them to fail.
yeah,
Be very much, I've really noticed how well you've done this week. I really enjoyed that. And keep motivating them, because half the time the weight and the pressure is already there for them. They don't
yeah.
need other people to wait for them to fail.
But also, if we're reframing resolutions into smaller achievement of goals, we are scenario planning with our obstacles and our what ifs, then we can also reframe where things haven't gone according to plan. So they're not failing at achieving a resolution or achieving a goal. They've just had a small setback. And how can we help to reframe that?
And, tomorrow's the next day. So let's
start afresh the next day. Yeah. I found some interesting suggestions for New Year's resolutions for managers. And the thing I like about this, and I will say that it's AI generated, which means that I can't point you to a particular website where this is, but we can copy and paste this onto the website, onto our webpage. But it was in three main areas. So one is people and culture, the other is strategy and execution, and the third is self-leadership. What I like about the people and culture is that it starts with the very first one of building psychological safety.
Yeah.
Now, again, we can have a whole episode on psychological safety, because I see it as being it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
So it will vary day to day, person to person, etc. But the principle of creating psychological safety is really important. Yeah. Number 2 is be a wellbeing role model.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is listen actively.
Yeah.
Number 4, give better feedback. And number 5, develop talent.
Well, we've got a whole episode on feedback, haven't we? So you can listen for more on that. But I do think that should be ingrained in your culture.
Yeah.
As a leader or in your workplace, is that people want to feel that they can be authentic. They want to feel that when you're speaking to them, that you're not just waiting to answer, but you're actively listening. We do a lot of these things. I'm sure you've done many training sessions with people about active listening and passive listening, but actually embodying it is completely different.
But also, because of the way that we're reframing these are not 5 resolutions. These are just 5 approaches that you have as being a good manager. Yeah. So you're not then weighed down by these 5, and we haven't even got on to strategy and execution yet. This is just about how you're present, how you show up, how you demonstrate good leadership, and how you create a well-functioning team. Yeah. So I don't feel that there's a lot in those 5. I think they're really quite achievable. And then strategy and execution. Yeah. A big title, but the principle of them, so there are 4 here, it again is quite straightforward. Clarify purpose. So having clearly defined goals. Who wouldn't want their line manager to do that for them and with them? Embrace flexibility and AI. Break down silos and be accountable. And this is about being authentic, admitting your own mistakes quickly, explaining decisions, demonstrate authenticity by aligning actions with stated values. So these are all principles that we can buy into as leaders rather than resolutions that we need to set out to achieve. So I think those were authentic. And then the self-leadership, question the shoulds. So is there so much of what you should do as a manager that's weighing you down? And could that be stifling yourself and your performance, which by association then has a negative impact on that of your team? Seek feedback and mentor others. So those...
You could almost do a whole episode on that alone, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we pass it on and how do we mentor? I think there's two things really that picks up for me. One of them is around, again, you're promoted by experience, not necessarily your people skills. Whereas leadership is all about your people skills, all about things that you may not have been trained for. So there's a lot around that, isn't there?
Yeah.
But in reality, you're still a human being interacting with other human beings.
Yeah.
And so these things should be innately to be able to go, just be present and show up for your people.
Yeah. And these are ways of being.
Exactly.
Ways of approaching things and people and opportunities.
Yeah.
They're not, I must, I should, they're just...
we talk about it a lot, and I think maybe this will be a series of episodes or something that we'll end up launching as a PDF, will be about the 10 ways that you can versus how you should. Shoulds and coulds and the impact of that, isn't it? So much into that. But when it comes to going into New Year, I think what I'd be really interested in from our listeners' perspectives is what's their experience of coming to a new year, and whether they notice a shift in their leadership style or even their leaders after a break. So I know that often when I speak to peers, or at least either really energized and ready to do it all with ridiculous expectations of the year, almost the opposite of what we want to see, or they're so tired that they kind of come in with, right, I need to achieve all this, but I haven't got the energy to. So it takes them a while to get into the year and feel like that. And if you've got those as role models, neither of them are good.
Yeah.
But if you're coming, like you're saying, as a present human being into a space, because you need to have all those things in order to even achieve your work goals anyway.
Yeah.
But you can't have that unless you are able to go, this is who I am. Let me hear your story. What's going on with you? What do you need from me? Simple questions, but actually can reveal a lot about that individual, isn't it? And that person. But like you say, having psychological safety is a huge episode in itself.
Yeah.
But you are right, this is ways of being. Yeah. But actually, regardless of what work you do, we're all accountable to something.
Yeah. I just like them. I like the 3 areas: people and culture, strategy and execution, and self-leadership. And those are all ways of being rather than New Year's resolutions. Yeah. Those are asks of how you are as a leader, how you are as a team colleague, how you are for your team, and how you are for yourself. So I think that then moves the New Year resolution into being a more achievable aspiration, a more achievable ask. Our asks of you are...
Now, I'm just thinking in terms of, we always go in with, we're in the last quarter of the year, was my thought. So we're in quarter 4. So even though we're thinking about it as a New Year's resolution, everyone's rushing because they've got the last quarter of the year to do financially.
Yeah.
So that's where the 2 heads of the coin come in, where we kind of fresh, but we want to really finish well.
Yes.
Even though we're in the first quarter. But I didn't really have it was just a thought that was in my mind of how does that impact someone's perspective to be self-leading in a good way.
Yeah.
If their goal is just to achieve their own personal KPIs by March.
Yeah.
And how that can start a New Year's resolution in a quite forceful way. A lot of people start having away days in January and February because they want to finish well.
Yeah.
And that actually starts in a very anxiety-provoking way, because you want to start, you're thinking about the whole year and the way of being. Whereas your workplace, for example, maybe we need to finish this quarter in
Yes.
the KPIs.
Yeah.
And I don't think I see any more. I've seen so many more accountants and anyone that's to do with finance in that last quarter than I ever do with anyone else.
Yes.
Because it's all about head down, get the figures through.
And that in the work context is one of the things that scuppers those New Year resolutions, because we make them in January. And yet, as you said, we're in the final quarter of the year, in the financial year, and the focus of achieving those financial goals, spending the budget, setting new budgets for the year ahead is likely to scupper the clarity of purpose, the building psychological safety, the being a well-being role model, because those 2 years are out of sync with each other, aren't they?
Yeah. So I've got a bit of a question for the listeners to kind of think about, and that would be around what's their experience of goal setting and support in the workplace. And if you dare to have a story that you can share with us of good and bad experiences where you've kind of shared that in the workplace. But that's more questions for you to ask to us, isn't it, to respond to us. But I suppose the other part is more for listeners to ponder on is how you going, if you do have a goal starting, in what ways can you use it to be self-compassionate to yourself this year?
Yeah.
And how, if you use it in a more self-compassionate goal setting way, how can that shift your mindset?
Yeah, how do you keep that going with all of the challenges that we face? So our ask of you is to like, to download, and to share this podcast.
We'd love you to download our episode, share, like in our social media, and engage in the questions that we have for you, and let us know what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed, please download the podcast on any of your platforms that you listen on. Share, like, and follow so others can enjoy. Until next time, keep your heels high and your standards higher.